And what you'll find in socials and marketing is that if you give somebody a response or give them some kind of pride in whatever social interaction it is, whatever social media interaction it is, then they feel some kind of like a loyalty to that brand of, well, they've engaged with me, they've taken the time to respond to me, I'm much more inclined to engage with their content in the future. If you times that by a scale of 100, then that's a lot of people coming back to engage with your content.
Hello, thanks everyone for joining. And today my guest is Nathan Edmonds, who is the head of social media marketing at HotDropGG. And despite his very young age, he has a very long experience working in the industry. He has been a marketing specialist at Hitmaker, Excel, Esports, Gfinity, and basically today he's going to talk us through his experience and overall talk more about social media marketing in esports. So thanks for joining, Nathan.
So good. Looking forward to it, man. Always like these types of conversations. So yeah.
So you have been in the industry since 2019. At least that's what your LinkedIn profile says.
Right. So yeah, a little bit sooner than that. So I started in 2014, and then properly, I guess, full-time paid work from, I want to say 2018. Yeah. I just reiterated this story yesterday, actually, at an event. So, yeah, I can briefly take you through that, I guess, if that's helpful.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Yeah, cool. So in 2014, I started my own YouTube channel, and I'm no content creator, but it was just something that I was really interested in doing and understanding. You know, I had a PC. I was very fortunate to have something like that, and get started around my passion, which was Call of Duty at the time. 2015 kind of spurred off watching a lot of Nadeshot, a lot of Hex, a lot of Scump, which are all Call of Duty influencers, I guess, to some degree, specifically around Optic Gaming, which now everyone knows, but back then were kind of like a legacy Call of Duty brand. I want to start my own team, so I did in 2015. Started Radiant Esports. I ended it in 2019 because I kind of had to follow that journey or branch off and go follow my esports career, which I chose that instead. Did a couple of things, joined Esports Insider in 2018 and then left in 2020 to join Excel Esports, which is obviously the leading UK esports organization. And then, yeah, had a short stint at Hitmarker Jobs and then was offered a job at HotDrop, which I'm now head of social. So that was a really numbed down version of it, I guess.
I guess throughout the interview, we'll go deeper into each of those parts of your career. And first of all, I would like to ask about your personal preferences in terms of esports. Like, which games do you follow and which one is like your top favorite?
Used to be Call of Duty. Used to be a big fan of Call of Duty back in the day. Ever since they franchised it, I've tended to kind of steer away from it now, out of just kind of lost interest. I was very interested in kind of the storylines of amateur to pro, which kind of got removed with that implementation of franchising. So I kind of just follow League of Legends now, I'll be honest. Yeah, LEC mainly. That kind of branches off, again, me having a long stint at Excel, so kind of being forced to be interested in League of Legends. So yeah, just League at the moment, I think.
Okay. Tell us more about Radiant Esports.
Yeah, so Radiant was my little baby. I started it in obviously 2015 and then ended in 2019. We did loads of different things. We had teams fielded in Halo, Call of Duty, CSGO, League of Legends, Apex, Dota for a short while. Basically any esport that was popular at the time, we had a team at some time and some period. We fielded a roster there. So yeah, I learned many different things. I think that's how I really found what I was somewhat good at, which was specifically social, and then wider kind of marketing. So I was in a little bit of a weird period in 2015 where it was kind of like also 2018 where I either go to university, I didn't really know what to do. There was a lot of pressure to go to university because parents didn't really understand maybe what all the different routes were, right? Not doesn't help that my brother's a doctor, so it's very much like, oh, he did that route, so you must do that. There's the only way you can be successful if you go to university. So I did an apprenticeship in digital marketing and learned all the different basic things of SEO to PPC to a little bit of social stuff too, whilst I was obviously doing Radiant and a couple of freelance things on the side. In 2018, I met Adam Fitch, and Adam basically put me in contact with Sam Cook, who was the MD at Esports Insider and still is. We had a conversation and we moved on from there, and then I was able to fulfill it full time. But back to Radiant, I guess, because that was the question, was like, yeah, we fielded many teams, went to many different events. We placed second at Malta, at a Maltese event, which was really cool. Where else did we go? We went to Denver, we went to Vegas, which was awesome. We went to, obviously, London many times. There was many different events that took us all around the world from various different esports. So Call of Duty was for Las Vegas specifically, and then Malta. Denver was for Halo, for example, where we placed top 16 among like Optic, Envy, like some of the biggest teams in the world. So it was really cool for us to sit among those brands that I'd always looked up to, I guess, to some degree. Probably my proudest achievement at the organization was we led a 13-day charity live stream in 2019 that was kind of aimed to beat the world record, which was some stupid amount of hours that we would have beat if the power didn't go out halfway through, because of course it did, because our luck is just immense. So yeah, I mean, through that, it was I've learned many different things, and what I figured out through the brand is, because sure, we saw some competitive success, and there's trophies still in the background now. We got medals from all different things that we won, but we weren't known as the team that obviously just won everything. Let's say like a G2 had a short period where they just won everything. What we were known for is our content and our social strategy. What I used to always say back then, which I still reiterate now, is make a penny look like a pound. So make shit look good, basically. Even though we weren't winning everything, we were still smashing social results, and therefore kind of the main interest in our community when it came to commercial opportunities. Because when we can go, okay, look, we've got these type of rosters, this is what we're doing with them, these are the content, this is the content that we're creating, this is what we're doing on social, then it adds a lot more interest from that side. And not many teams were doing it back then. Social media obviously had existed for many years, but not many teams fully understood the value of it, nor did they know how to execute on it. And that wasn't just at an amateur level too, that was definitely up to the professional level. And not saying we were the first to do it, but we were pretty ahead of our time in the amateur community in terms of social presence. So we took full advantage of that. And yeah, it benefited us. And that's where I found out, well, maybe social media is something I can look into as a career, right? Because something I enjoy, something I'm clearly not too bad at. So yeah, kind of spurred on that decision, I guess.
But this is actually a very great transition point to my next question, which is like, what are some of the most important learnings during your time in Radiant Esports that are currently helping you being a social media marketer?
I think a little bit of leadership. As the owner of an org, you do everything. So there's not just one area that you look after, you do a bit of everything. So I think a little bit of leadership and understanding. Also, stakeholder management is one of the key things I've learned through all my different roles, but Radiant specifically was okay because I've got players, I've got staff, I've got external partners, I've got obviously the TOs that we have to engage with too. All these different types of relationships that all need different types of approaches and different types of communication methods to each. And understanding how to change how you communicate to one individual. So how you speak to your star player is going to be different how you speak to a content creator or how you speak to an external partner. So probably stakeholder management I think was pretty important. And then leadership early on. I've never been like I definitely wasn't like a born leader, but I think being put into that position where I've had to manage basically a whole team of at some point 20, 30 plus people. Even when the charity live stream, that was 40 plus people over like a 13-day period. I somehow managed it. So I think probably stakeholder management and a little bit of leadership too, I think.
And what do you think was the special thing that you did that was like separating Radiant Esports from the others in terms of social media presence?
I think just a little bit of self-deprecating humor is always great. People like that. Obviously, Duty's known for it now. I think having fun, not being afraid to step outside the box a little bit. Don't speak like a robot. Don't be super professional. Don't be this and that. And I think also just engaging content, just engaging things that we're doing. We were kind of the first to go, or at least in our scene, the first to go, well, let's scrap these boring static graphics that everyone uses for like a win-loss and then instead do something. So we did like an animation, we did a GIF. I was very fortunate that my best friend, still is a very good friend of mine, turned out to be a very good graphic designer. We used to play Call of Duty all the time, and when I started following social media, he started doing graphic design. So I was very fortunate to have him by my side at all times to go, okay, lead the direction of like what our branding would look like. So we were way ahead at that time, I think, in terms of innovating what you can do on socials, specifically how we communicated and what our tone of voice was, because we weren't afraid to have some fun, basically, which a lot of teams back then were of. They were just boring, same old thing. I mean, you could look at all the teams across the board and were tweeting the same thing in the same kind of voice, and it was boring. So we were not afraid to make a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, that makes actually absolute sense. Right now, what you described is basically what all of the esport orgs are trying to do. Excel, for example, they've been trying to jump this meme direction very recently. But I totally understand how it could have been like an amazing innovation back in the day when you just started. So speaking about Excel, tell us more about your experience working at it.
Yeah, so how I joined Excel was quite weird. I guess Radiant was technically, well, they were on paper competitors towards Excel, and we beat them in 2018. So yeah, we'll take that. In like a Halo event, I think it was the Denver one. And then I've always been friends with Kieran and Joel, who are the original founders, the brothers. So I want to say just before my birthday in 2020 in February, I got a message from Joel saying, hey, do you mind emailing me your CV? So I did. I sent it over. And then I got an email back from them saying, oh, could we hop on a call? Could we have some discussions? I was like, sure. Kind of cryptic. Don't know really what's going on, but we hop on a call. And they were like, look, our current social media manager is soon to leave. Like, we need somebody to replace this person. Would you be interested? I was like, well, I'm definitely interested, of course. Like, what does the timeline look like? They're like, well, we need you to move down to London in the next 2 weeks and live in basically in one of the player houses in Twickenham. And yeah, come start work. So I was like, wow, I'm in a full-time job already. So I spoke to Sam at Esports Insight. I was like, could I be able to do this and have my notice in now and leave it now? And he was absolutely fine with it. And yeah, 2 weeks later in March 2020, I moved down to London. 2 weeks later, after obviously being embedded in the office and meeting the team and all that good stuff, COVID hit. So I was kind of give the decision of, do I want to go back home and spend time with family and not knowing when I will return? Or do I want to stay with the players and stay in this environment? And realistically, I think the safer bet was always to go with family. So I did, because back then you had no idea whether it was going to be 2 months, 3 months, or a year, right? So I moved back home, and basically my entire 2-year stint at Excel was working from home, which a lot of the company were, because again, we went through the transition period of moving offices. That was like my last 6 months there where it was officially set up. So there was never really like a proper office setup prepared that everybody was coming into on a regular basis. So from that perspective, yeah, I mean, my time at Excel was crazy good. I met some incredibly talented people and some people that I'll call friends, hopefully for a long time, and learnt many different things. So I was the only social media manager there for a year and a half, and that obviously came with its own challenges. I was able to hire somebody else, Josh, who's now moved on to G2, and is doing great things. So there was a lot of key learnings from it. I think it really solidified how I looked at socials and how I understood social media, at least from that perspective. Because at Radiant, it was very much, it was mine, it was my project. Working for somebody else and doing it forces you to innovate in a different way. So I was very fortunate to be surrounded by great people, work with very, very talented people. And yeah, further learn and progress my skills around social media.
Before continuing our talk about social media and esports, I'd also like to ask you a question about Sweet Cabin. Just tell us more about it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I started in 2021, March, because out of pure boredom. There's no real like romantic story to it. I was just bored and I wanted to do something on the side, so I started. I think I had, since Radiant ended, I definitely had a bit of a gap in I guess my brain that was like, I need to do something nutritional. So Sweet Cabin was that. what I use Sweet Cabin as is basically a big case study of like what works and trying shit that shouldn't work. So I'm very interested in the kind of like the psychology of marketing, right? Of how people make decisions and how you can take people through the funnel of the checkout process, and then how do they buy it? So how do they go from just seeing the product maybe on social media or seeing it elsewhere, whatever that process looks like, to actually going to the website and then converting as a customer. So fascinated from that point of view, and to no surprise, the socials have done very, very well. It's everything else that could do better. So it's very nutritional to me to look into that and break it down and see, okay, how can I further amplify that or further deliver on that? And it's great for relationship builders too. And we've done a ton of white label stuff for companies like HyperX PC Specialist, SideQuest we just did recently, which was quite cool. New Meta Gaming Arena, which is in North London. So there's a lot more that we want to do there. The sky's the limit really, in terms of what we can do. So yeah, it's exciting. I mean, the long-term goal is to turn it into something that is basically pays for my mom and dad so they can retire and chill, and hopefully cover those costs. But yeah, from my perspective, it's just super nutritional to have something that I can put all the ideas that, let's say, I couldn't try elsewhere into a project that I can do, because, well, it's mine, so I can do whatever I want.
So social media is evolving on a daily basis. What is it that you do to stay on top of all those changes?
Yeah, life as a social media manager these days is crazy, isn't it? Because every platform is changing every single day and algorithms are updating. I think what I do personally, or how I look at it, is that, look, here's the set amount of rules that always basically apply. And sure, it can change drastically sometimes, but here's the rules that always work. Whether that's accessibility of content, whether that's actually, okay, creating good content for your audience. These are all very, very important things. In terms of algorithm, it depends how serious you want to take it. If something massively changes, like Twitter, let's say, like specifically the verification removal was a pretty impactful change, right? How can we respond to that? In terms of the individual, like weekly changes, it's something that you kind of have to take with a pinch of salt, because Instagram will change literally every single week. It's kind of impossible to adapt every single week. So it's kind of like, okay, that's happened this week. Let's keep track of that and keep our eyes on that. If that's still happening in 3 weeks, maybe it's something we should adapt to. If it's not, then, well, yeah, let's leave it and not react to it. Because if you're reacting on a weekly basis, then your content that you're making is just like a roller coaster going up, and then it's just chaos because you're having to create new content for that algorithm every single week. So I think it's just about, okay, assessing what has happened that week to said platform, understanding and evaluating, is that the right decision to make that change right now? Great example was for Twitter when they accidentally basically removed the crop feature. It was like, well, shit, all the graphics that we've made in 1350 by 1080 need to go back to 1920 by 1080. Should we do that now? Should we do that? Whatever. We had this discussion as a team and we were kind of like, well, let's wait, because Twitter are going to reverse it. And then Elon Musk tweeted that he was going to reverse it. So we were like, okay, well, we're glad we held off, because yeah, sometimes you did need to be reactive and that's fine. But most of the time, I think it's very much, look, use your own senses. You know what works well. That has always stayed the same. But in terms of individual algorithms, it's just assessing it as and when it happens and understanding, okay, do I need to adapt to this, or can I wait out the storm until it basically reverses back, I think.
One of the hardest things to do in marketing is kind of building a connection between the brand and their audience, and in this case, between the gaming audience. So what are some of the strategies that you do to ensure that this connection establishes?
With Sweet Cabin, it's direct engagement. I think it's very important to me. Anybody that tweets us is definitely getting a like, is definitely getting some kind of retweet if necessary, and then some kind of response back. Direct engagement is super important to me. It's showing to them that you've seen them, you've heard them, and giving them some kind of value back. I think it's the number one easiest and most impactful thing any organization can do, is just engage back with your fans. Hardly any top level esports organizations do it. If you've got 100 comments, then hardly any of those posts are getting like, if any. It's important to me to go through and engage with every single fan or every single follower as much as you can, because you build that special bond. A response on social media from, I don't know, let's say like a fanatic, means so much more than it does to the social media manager typing it. so much more to the fan than it does to the social media manager typing it. And it goes a super, super long way. And what you'll find in socials and marketing is that if you give somebody a response or give them some kind of pride in whatever social interaction it is, whatever social media interaction it is, then they feel some kind of like a loyalty to that brand. Of, well, they've engaged with me, they've taken the time to respond to me, I'm much more inclined to engage with their content in the future. If you times that by a scale of 100, then that's a lot of people coming back to engage with your content. That's I think the most obvious one to me that I've always focused in on is that community engagement. It's super important.
Funny that you mentioned it today, because I made a tweet yesterday about Fnatic, and Sam Matthews, the CEO of Fnatic, liked that tweet.
Nice.
So yeah, that was pretty exciting for me.
Goes a long way, hey? Yeah, it goes a long way.
So I also talked to like several starting esports organizations before. Some playing, I don't know, Prime League in Germany. Others are basically just starting amateur organizations who have a lot of ambitions. And many of them have mentioned as one of their main struggles the ability to create a social media strategy and gain their audience, like their very first audience. What would you recommend them to do to get started on their path?
I think just have some kind of direction. There's tons of resources online in terms of what you need to build out. So tone of voice document is probably the most important thing. And that's specifically, okay, how do we communicate on social media? Like, what is that angle that we take? What's the language that we use? Like, how do we type it? How do we communicate it? Who do we communicate it with? Creating a document like that is pretty important, because then you can give it to any kind of social media manager and go, okay, well, this is what we need to follow. Sure, every social media manager has their own personal tone of voice that will always have a different accent, let's say, on the tone of voice document. But it's important to have something in place where you can all align. That's the direction we want to head in. Strategy gets thrown around so much these days as kind of like a buzzword, but why that piece of strategy is important is because, well, it sets the direction of what you want your social channels to look like. And also it generates conversation. Okay, let's actually talk about what we want it to look like, rather than let's just doing it and just in doing whatever content we want to do. Set some direction, because long term, creating that consistency would only bring more people interested in your brand. Because, well, what do you get personally comfortable is when a brand is consistently doing something that you enjoy over time, you're much more likely to follow them and engage with them, and obviously support their content, let's say. Whereas a brand that is changing every single week and doing something different every single week is a little bit of quite jarring to understand and follow and watch. So yeah, direction for that social strategy is very, very important, and setting up that tone of voice. There'll be millions of resources online that will tell you how to create a tone of voice too. You're never going to get it perfect the first time, but as long as the direction internally, then that's all that really matters.
I would like to follow up on my question and talk more about like technicalities also of for starting organizations. So first of all, what are the social medias that you would recommend them to focus on? And the second one, are there any like technical aspects that they should consider, or maybe some technical actions that they should do to get advantage compared to the others?
I'm going to give the boring answer, which is it depends what your strategy is. If you want esports, then sure, Twitter's great. If you want
just esports.
If you want Gen Z, if you want Gen Z, then maybe TikTok's probably the easiest one to look at. If you want people, again, if you want kind of a mixture of Gen Z that understand and like aesthetically pleasing content, then maybe Instagram's the one. If you want a little bit of the older generation, you want millennials up to boomers, then you probably want Facebook, right? So it depends on your strategy at the end of the day too, of like who you want to target, what your core aim is. Are you selling a product? Are you selling a service? Then maybe LinkedIn is probably better if it's serviced. Whereas if you're a product, then maybe Facebook, Instagram, tick off that box. Depends what you want to do. There's a different social channel for a different, obviously, audience and a different target. Can you do all of them at the same time? Sure you can. But I think the best way to put it is don't put all your eggs in one basket. So don't just focus on one social. 2 is usually pretty good. But again, at the same time, whatever the reference is for not putting all your eggs in loads of different baskets. Don't try to do all different social channels at once because, well, you've set yourself up for failure because at least 3 of the socials are just going to suck and maybe 2 will be decent. So hone in 2 that are interesting to you and build out your social presence, because it also looks good when you link out on a website too to have multiple socials. And having a social presence has been proven to inspire some kind of confidence when consumers buy, because, well, they go, if they've got a social media presence and they must have something to lose, there is a platform I can go complain to too if I'm not happy with my order, so they feel a little bit more comfortable there. Builds up that brand trust, I guess, before you make that purchase.
So influencer marketing has been probably one of the biggest strengths in marketing, like a huge powerhouse in terms of marketing strategy. How important is it in esports specifically?
So, sorry, say that first bit again.
So influencer marketing,
marketing,
is very important. Yeah.
I think undoubtedly in most strategies in the modern world, influencer marketing is very, very important. Yeah, because, well, people don't like to be sold like brands from the brand account. They want to see individual people that they can relate to sell something to them and say this is good or say this is great. So yeah, again, depending on the product and service that you're offering, I think it's highly impactful. Do I think every brand needs to look into it? Like, no, it's each of their own brand, of course. At the end of the day, if it works for you, it works. And you should evaluate that. For Sweet Cabin, we absolutely have to work with influencers to many different degrees, whether that's our affiliate program or partnership program, whatever that is. There's many different levels to it. So yeah, I think it's very important, depending on your strategy. For Sweet Cabin, yeah, that's definitely something that's quite important to us.
And if we're talking about esports, like for example, would Excel, when it was just starting, need help from an influencer?
I think help's a weird one. I think it's like signing an influencer is something you have to play the long-term game with. It's also something, okay, you probably want to sign somebody that taps into an audience that you don't already tap into, because then basically why you're signing a content creator on the blunt face of it is that you can widen up your commercial opportunity. If you have I don't know, you're a UK esports organization and then you have a German-based content creator that speaks English, then you can sell that entirely different audience, right? Whereas if you just sign another UK content creator, then, well, you're just building only on the audience that you already had and you're already trying to commercialize. So I think it diversifies commercial opportunities, and that's why people do it. Again, not a must. You can be an esports org and survive without influencers. Is it important? Yeah, absolutely.
The next topic I want to talk about is the formal education in esports. I saw on Twitter that you are pretty much against it. It was, I think, one of the universities and pretty top ones opened a master's program in esports, if I'm not mistaken. And so tell us more about your take on it.
Yeah, I think initially, about a year and a half ago, I was very against it, or at least whenever I found out of it, I was very against it. I think now I'm definitely more on the fence. Look, do I agree with it and do I think it's good? Personally, no. But my personal opinion doesn't matter because it's here to stay, and there's no way of getting rid of it, basically. So my mind has instead shifted, and my aim is instead shifted to, okay, how do we best utilize it now and make it the best possible course, degree, whatever you want to call it, available to these students? And what does that look like? Whether that's industry support from all different types of levels, whether that's people like myself coming in to speak to the students and offer some kind of insight, whether that's actually assisting on the course details and going, okay, well, this is what the offering is right now. Here would be my suggestion, for example. So staffs uni are pretty good at that. They've actually gave me the course and were like, would love your thoughts on it. Like, I'm no, what's the word? Like, I'm no academic, basically. So it's not my field of expertise. However, I can offer some insight from an esports perspective, right? I think, yeah, look, it's going to exist and it's going to exist forever. It's just realistically, how can we best utilize it and best kit it out to be truly beneficial for the people undertaking it. Because, well, my care is not in the universities nor the degree, it's in the students that are signing up to it in the thousands each year, and they're being led into our industry, which realistically doesn't have the opportunities to fit all these thousands of students. So it's a complex problem that I'm quite passionate about personally, because, well, I see myself as one of those that could have maybe gone down that route and seen, I'm passionate about esports. I see a shining esports degree in the distance, and I just go for it. And then I'd probably be very disappointed with what I got. I think what I do want to reiterate, and I try to say as much as possible, because maybe it's not obvious, is that students, it's not your fault. Like, us industry people, there's some people way more passionate about it than me and super angry that have come out and said certain things, or at least implied that they wouldn't hire somebody with an esports degree, which is absurd. I can say the majority of the people in the industry that are passionate about it just want to assist and help the students get more substance from the degree itself and go on to get a fruitful career. That's all we want. Unfortunately, there has been a few that have come out and said, well, yeah, I wouldn't hire somebody if there's an esports degree, which is absurd, because what are you saying? Like, fuck the students, which is crazy. In my eyes, at least, it's like, it's never the student's fault in terms of like what they've signed up for and what is being delivered to them. So why would you not hire them just because they've got a certain degree? But what I can say is the majority of us don't think like that. The majority of us are pretty passionate, ensuring that we get on site and get access to these students to be able to discuss our personal stories and our experience through esports, give them opportunities through our different roles and what we do. It's very important to me. So yeah.
So I would actually like to add to it from my perspective. And just a couple of months ago, I was one of those thousands of students that you mentioned that are applying. I don't know why I decided to do that, mostly because I wanted to get more connections, more connections in esports.
Which is grateful, by the way.
Yeah, but then I realized I can do the same just by starting a YouTube channel.
Yes.
So here I am. I actually dropped it right just after a month. Because I realized that it's while it might give a lot of insights into it, I don't think it's impossible to get those insights much faster and
absolutely
in some other ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah,
the only thing I was going to add was, realistically, for those with no understanding of esports ever, then maybe the degree's great from that perspective. But if you just need to meet the right person in the industry, and they'll be able to hand you that experience or give you those opportunities or tell you the stories that the degree is going to tell you and explain that to you. So yeah, it's one of those.
And as a last question, if we both agree that esports academic education is not at the level that you want it to be yet, how would you suggest people to get into esports?
How do I suggest them? I think go to an event. Go to an event if you can. Go to something local first. There's always something local to your region. America's great for it. I mean, the UK still has a little bit more to do. It's very London focused at the moment. But go to an event, whether that's, a local fighting game community event, whether that's, an insomnia event, which is in the Midlands here in England, which is kind of like a festival where you can do loads of different things. Go to an event, put up the cost for a ticket if you can, get some time off work if you can. If you're in university and you're doing the esports degree, ask them to fund it, ask them to pay for your ticket and say, look, this is what I want to do. Lay out how are you going to approach it and how it will benefit you, and they may offer you that. Go to an event, just get the feel for it of what's going on. If you can, speak to a couple people, print out a different business card if you've got it, give them your social links, get a follow on Twitter. Connect with these people after a follow up and say, it was really great meeting you. Could we hop on a call for 50 minutes? I can pick your brain. Probably go to an event and just, whatever that capacity looks like, and throw yourself outside the box. Speak to as many people as you can. Make sure there's some kind of follow up after the event, that you're connecting with these people too, and that you're walking away with some kind of value. I think would be the most clear one for me right now. Unfortunately, that's not available to everyone because, well, yeah, events are pricey, and then travel is also pricey these days. And not everybody can afford that, which I'm totally sympathetic to. So, I mean, use your online presence is definitely key too, whether it's somebody like you that's starting their own podcast because they can, and amplifying from that point and meeting and having interesting conversations with obviously some industry leaders. So whatever it is you can do, whether that's starting your own Twitter account, engaging with people, whether that's just starting posting memes yourself and tagging people, messaging people that you look up to and go, oh, can I grab 50 minutes of your time? Whatever that looks like, there's many different routes into it. What I say is just do something. Just start by doing something now. There's no point thinking about it, stressing about it and going, oh, how do I approach this and that? Just go do it, because you're trying to get your first step in the industry. It's going to take a while. Once you're in the industry, I'd say it's pretty easy to navigate, or personally, I think it's pretty easy to navigate and climb the ladder, in terms of what, like a career-wise specifically, but you need to start by doing something now, and whether that's going to an event, speaking to someone, whatever that is, but I think that's what I would say.
So this was my last question for today, and thank you so much for your time, for all your insights. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm pretty sure that everyone who's listening to this podcast will get more information, and maybe just more information how to create their paths or create their branding for esports.
Thanks, man.
Thanks
I appreciate
so much.
it. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey, Arek here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please don't forget to subscribe, as we have more videos about esports coming weekly.